everybody! Welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. It's April, and that means it's time for another installment in our 2017 calendar blanket. And this month, it's a rabbit. I have gotten a lot of questions over the last few months about colors and yarn type, and I always use 100% acrylic yarn and a worsted weight size for this project. So I use the same kind of yarn every single time. Colors, however, are up to you guys. I put together a block based on the colors that I have available, and I know we don't all have access to the same colors and even sometimes the same brands of yarn. So this month, with that in mind, I figured I would give you guys 4 different colorway options that you could choose from or get inspiration from for your April calendar blanket square. The first colorway is inspired by the Easter Bunny himself. So this little rabbit is all white. His snout is white, his face is white, his ears are white, and he's got little pink accents. I put him on a blue background because I sort of picture the Easter Bunny hopping around against a blue spring sky. And that is square number 1. Thinking about the Easter Bunny got me thinking about chocolate. So the next one I did was a chocolate rabbit instead. So this bunny and his ears are done in a nice dark chocolate brown, and his snout is done in white so that he still looks like his little nose is poking out of his face. I like that contrast. And I gave him the same colored bow tie and the same colored pink accents in his ears. The third version I did was a caramel colored bunny because I love butterscotch. And I put him against a bright pink background because I was thinking Easter has a lot of pastel colors, the spring is soft colors, bright colors, all the flowers are exploding into bloom. So I thought maybe a bright background would be a lot of fun too. And I liked how it was the same as the color of his ears, and I liked how it sort of played off that butterscotch color that my little rabbit wound up being. And the last version of this square is inspired by all the real bunnies out there. I've got brown bunnies in the backyard, and a friend of mine at university had a sweet little gray bunny, and I had him in mind when I had this one put together. And I love purple. I love lavender and lilac, and that is a spring color to be sure. So I put this dark gray bunny against a lavender background. I still gave him pink little highlights in his ears and the same turquoise bow tie, and quite frankly I love all 4 of them so much I'm not really sure which one I'm going to put in my blanket. So same kind of yarn, same weight of yarn, same color for your border, but past that, sky's the limit. This rabbit can be real, he can be chocolate, he can be imaginary, he can be any color you want him to be, and so can the background. So let's have some fun! Dive into that stash of yarn, pick out some fabulous spring colors, and let's go to the craft table with our hooks and our yarn and make ourselves the April Bunny Rabbit calendar square. For our bunny squares, we need about 6 different colors. This will vary depending on what colors you choose to make your rabbit square out of. You're going to need at least 1 color for your rabbit, that includes his head and his ears, a background color, and whatever border color you've been using for the rest of your squares. Today, I'm going to use a nice light gray for my rabbit, a soft lilac for the background, and of course white for my border or my edging. Then you're going to need some accent colors. You're going to need a little black for his eyes, some white or off-white for his snout and the little eye flecks, some pink for his nose and the inside of his ears, and some bright happy color for his bow tie. So I have some white and some black and some pink, and I'm using a turquoise for his bow. You're going to need a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, and we're using a 5.5 millimeter hook or an I-9. And once you've got all that together, we can get started. We're going to move along quickly with this bit of the tutorial since the main build of the square is a lot like the teddy bear or the snowman. So if you need further in-depth instructions, you can check out those tutorials. The links will be in the description box down below. We're going to begin with a cinch circle. We're going to chain an extra 2, so you have 3 chains in total. That counts as a double crochet moving forward, and you're going to work 11 double crochet into your cinch circle for row 1. At the end of row 1, cinch your circle shut. Including your chain 3, you'll have 12 double crochets all the way around. You can join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. And round 2 begins with a chain 3 that counts as a double crochet again into the same stitch as joining, and work 2 double crochet in each stitch all the way around. You'll have 24 double crochets at the end of row 2. At the end of row 2, you'll have 24 stitches. And since we're working in the round-ish, and you want to avoid that little gap, you can use my little trick of working a final double crochet into that false stitch that sits at the base of the chain 3. Skip over the top of the chain 3 and actually join to the top of the first real double crochet you made. That doesn't change your stitch count, and it closes in that gap very nicely. On to row 3. Chain 3 to begin, double crochet in the same stitches joining, so that counts as 2. Work 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and that's your pattern. 2 double crochet into the next stitch, double crochet into the next stitch, repeat that all the way around, and you'll have 36 stitches at the end of row 3. That's 36 stitches at the end of row 3. You can use my little cheat here by adding another double crochet into the bottom of that false stitch and then joining to the top of the real double crochet. Row 4, chain 3 to begin, double crochet into the same stitches joining, so that counts as 2, and then double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And that's your pattern all the way around. 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. At the end of row 4, you'll have 48 stitches. At the end of row 4, you'll have 48 stitches. Join with a slip stitch, and let's start row 5. Chain 3 to begin, double crochet into the same stitches joining, and we're still increasing, so you're going to work a double crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. And that's the pattern for row 5. 2 double crochet into the first stitch, double crochet into each of the next 3. 2, 1, 1, 1. All the way around, and you'll have 60 stitches at the end of row 5. At the end of row 5, you're going to have 60 stitches. You can snip your yarn, fasten off your rabbit color, and now we're going to move on to the background. You can either weave in your short tail now, work over top of it for the next round, or weave them all in when you're finished at the end. We're going to make a slip knot with our background color. We're going to join right where we fastened off our last color with a slip stitch. Chain 3 to begin. This is row 6. We're still increasing, so we're going to work a double crochet into the same stitches joining. And work a double crochet into each of the next 4 stitches. And that's your pattern for row 6. 2 double crochet into the first stitch, double crochet into each of the next 4, repeat around, and you'll have 72 stitches at the end of row 6. At the end of row 6, you'll have 72 stitches. You can join with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3 or do the extra one and skip, however you want to finish that row. And now we're going to square up our circle. This slip stitch counts as a slip stitch for this row. So instead of chaining anything, we're going to work directly into the very next stitch. We're going to single crochet. We're going to single crochet into the next stitch. Half double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Chain 2. And now we're going to repeat this but in reverse. Treble crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and now we're going to slip stitch across the next 2 stitches. So remember to try and keep these a little on the loose side. You don't want to tighten up the middles of your row. And now we work the same in reverse going out. Single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and so on. So your pattern is 2 slip stitches, single, single, half, half, double, double, treble, treble, chain 2, don't skip any stitches, treble, treble, double, double, half, half, single, single, slip, slip, single, single, and so on. You're going to repeat that all the way around. You're going to wind up with 4 chain 2 corners and a flattening of your circle. And I will see you at the end of this row. As you get back to the beginning, you're going to finish the row with single, single, slip stitch into the last stitch, and then that slip stitch that you joined your previous row with counts as the first slip stitch. So you're not going to do anything more. You're not going to join the row. That is the row completed. You can put it down, stretch out your corners. I like to use the heat of my hand to help kind of loosen up the stitches, and you can start to see a square happening. All right. You should still have 72 stitches at the end of this row with 4 chain 2 corners. All in all, we're now moving along to row 8. We're going to chain 3 to begin. This is just a plain old double crochet row. You're going to double crochet into every single stitch all the way across, and into every single chain 2 corner, you're going to work 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, into the corner. At the end of row 8, you'll have 88 stitches and 4 chain 2 corners. And I'll see you back round at the beginning. At the end of row 8, you can join with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3. This little space won't show, so don't worry about it. You should have 22 double crochets in total across each side, so that's 88 double crochets for the whole row, 4 chain 2 corners. Row 9 is just like row 8, so we're going to chain 3 to begin. You're going to double crochet in every single stitch. You're going to work 2 double crochet, chain 2, 2 double crochet in every corner, and that will give you a total of 104 double crochets, 4 chain 2 stitches, 4 chain 2 corners at the end of this row, and each side should have 26 double crochets running across it. So that's an easy way to count it up. Make sure you're on track. And I will see you at the end of this row. At the end of row 9, you can join with a slip stitch to the top of your chain 3, snip your yarn, fasten off, and now it's time for row 10, which is our border row. So make sure you grab your border color. It's the same color that all your other squares are bordered in. For me, that's white. We're going to begin with a slip knot, and this is the standard granny shell border. I like to join in a chain 2 space or corner with a slip stitch, chain 3 to begin, finish off that first shell with 2 double crochets worked into the same space, chain 2 for the corner, and work 1 more shell or 3 double crochets into the same space. And that will be my corner created. And like all the other squares, we're going to skip chain 1 for a spacer, skip 3 stitches, find the 4th one, and work a shell into it. And you're going to work that shell, chain 1, skip 3 stitches, shell, chain 1 into the next stitch. All the way across, you'll have 6 shells, 6 single shells across each side. And when you get to each corner, work shell, chain 2, shell into it. Make sure to include that chain 1 at the end, and I'll see you back round at the beginning. At the end of row 10, when you've finished your last shell, don't forget your last chain 1. You can join with a slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 that you began with, and that is it for the square. You can snip your yarn, fasten off, and weave in your tails. And like I said, if any of this moved a little quickly for you, the same instructions are available on the snowman square and the teddy bear square, and links are in the description box. Now let's make some facial features. Next we're going to make our little rabbit's eyes, and these are just like the teddy bear eyes. So you're going to need your black and a little bit of white. We're going to begin with a cinch circle. Chain one more so that you have a total of 2 chains coming out of your circle, and work 8 half double crochets into the circle. Once you've made 8 half double crochets into that circle, grab the short tail, cinch it shut, and you can join with a slip stitch to the top of the first half double crochet, I should say, that you made. So you're going to skip over that chain 2, you're going to ignore it, and that is the eye. You can take a moment to weave in the short tail across the back, but leave a long tail before you snip your yarn, because this is what you're going to sew your actual eye down to your square with. So you can fasten off, grab your yarn needle, and weave in the short tail around the back a few times. Next we're going to make this little glimmer in the corner of his eye. So you want your yarn needle, you want a small piece of the white yarn, or your off-white yarn, whichever color you're using. Thread it up, pick up your eye, and you're going to bring it through the very center of your eye. Leave a little bit out the back so that you have something to tie a knot with. And then very simply we're going to go through the top of a stitch, doesn't matter, any stitch you like, back out through the middle, and then up the other side. So through the stitch, top of the stitch next to it, either side, doesn't matter. You're going to create a little V, flip your eye over, tie those 2 knots, or those 2 ends together into a knot, I should say. There we go. Trim any excess, and you don't have to worry about weaving in these little bits. They're just going to get hidden when we sew down our eyes anyway. So go ahead, make 2 of those, and then we'll move on to his nose. We're going to make our bunny's nose now. This is the snout piece. We're going to start with the nice white back part of it. So grab your white or your off-white, whatever color you're using there. We're going to begin with a cinch circle, and this is also made the same way as our teddy bear snout. So we're going to chain 1 to secure the circle, chain 1 more because we're going to use the half double crochet stitch. This chain 2 does count as a half double crochet, and you're going to work 11 more half double crochets into your cinch circle. With 12 half double crochets, that includes your chain 2, cinch your circle shut. You're going to join to the top of that chain 2 with a slip stitch, and then we're going to make 1 more row. Chain 2 to begin. This counts as a half double crochet. Half double crochet into the same stitch as joining, so that little open space right there. And then work 2 half double crochets into every stitch all the way around. And remember that first one is a little funny, so you gotta pick up the edge there. You should have 24 half double crochets at the end of this row, and that will be the background for our snout made. You should have 24 stitches all the way around. This will not show this little gap, so you can find the top of your chain 2, join with a slip stitch to it. Make sure you actually have the chain 2. And fasten off. Remember, you want to leave enough tail that you can sew all the way around your snout piece when you sew it down to the rest of your square. So leave yourself a nice long tail and fasten off. Now you can weave in this little tail if you want back here, or you can just leave it loose, because when you sew it down it will be trapped between the square and the underside of your snout. Let's make his little nose now. This is the part of the snout that we're going to embroider, And we're going to give him a little bit of a mouth too. So I'm using pink for my nose. You want to cut a length of yarn that's about 4 feet or 120 centimeters long. Thread it up on your yarn needle. Pick up your snout piece. Have that dangling tail down at the bottom. We're going to bring our nose yarn in through the very center. And we're going to leave a little bit at the end for a knot. So make sure you hold back a little bit. Then we're going to find the top 5 stitches, and those are the stitches we're going to work. So I'm going to start on the left. I'm going to embroider long whip stitches between the center and the outside edge. I'm going to do about 3 of these per stitch, always coming back up through the center of my snout. Pull tightly, but not too tightly. You don't want to pull your snout out of alignment, but you also don't want these to be loose. So you're going to have to gauge this on your own. I like to kind of just barely bend down the top and then pull it back out after a little while. And it might sort of squish down a little bit, but not so much that it takes it or warps it. So about 3 long whip stitches between the center and the outmost stitch for all 5 of these across the top. Once you've worked about 3 long stitches between the center and the top of each of those top 5 stitches, remember to go underneath the top of the stitch because you need the stitch for sewing. You might have some little spaces in between, so you can, if wherever you finished, I came out here last, come back up through the center or 2 stitches away from wherever you finished, and just work some stitches between, not tightly, between the middle and the furthest right and the middle and the furthest left stitches. You may only need 1 or 2, and that'll just help fill in the gaps. Now it's time for a little mouth. So we're going to take our yarn, bring it up through the center once again. Make sure I still have my knotting yarns free back here. And I'm going to bring my yarn down through the edge of the stitch on either side of where I knotted off. So bottom right, just to the right of where I knotted off, back up through the center. Careful not to pull too tightly. And then hop over and to the left. And there you go. That's pretty simple. Flip it over. Grab your 2 pink ends. Create a nice little knot. Don't tie it too tightly because you don't want to pull these out of alignment. And then you can trim off whatever little bit of pink is left that you don't need. Back to our bunny here. Now we're going to make his ears, so you want to begin with your bunny color. So for me, that's gray. We're going to begin with a slip knot. And we're going to chain 8. Once you have 8 chains, we're going to skip over the first, find the second, and single crochet into it. Single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches or chains. Half double crochet into each of the next 3 chains. That should leave you with 1 chain left. You're going to work 6 double crochets into it. Once you have 6 double crochets worked into that last chain, it will naturally turn you so that you're looking at the underside of your foundation chain row, and we're going to work backwards now. Into the underside of the next 3 chains, you're going to half double crochet once into each chain. That should leave you with 3 chains. You're going to single crochet into each of them. And we're back at the beginning. Chain 1, turn your work. We're going to work all the way back around the entire edge of our ear for row 2. You're going to single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches. We've reached the turning edge of our ear, and into the next 6 stitches, so in the next 6, you're going to work 2 double crochet into each of them. So 2 double crochet into each of the next stitches. You'll have 12 double crochet after you've rounded the top of your ear. That should leave you with 6 stitches left. You're going to single crochet into each of the next 6 stitches, and that's it for the outer part of our ear. Once you've finished, you can cut yourself a long tail because you want to be able to sew all the way around your ear to sew it down to your square. So cut a nice long tail and go ahead and make a second one of those. Next thing we're going to do is make the inner ear part of our ear. That's this nice little pink bit here. So grab your pink or your inner ear color. Make a slip knot and chain 9. Once you have 9 chains, skip the first chain from the hook, single crochet into the second, and single crochet into each of the next 3 chains. That should leave you with 4 chains left. You're going to half double crochet into each of them. That's it for the inner ear. Make sure you cut yourself a long tail because you need to sew this down all the way around on top of your outer ear. Fasten off. Grab your yarn needle. You want to take this little short tail and weave it in across the back of the stitches, just up a few, just to get it out of your way and keep things neat and tidy. There we go. So that's the inner ear part of your ear. Now what you want to do is actually sew it down to the outer part of your ear. So grab your outer ear piece. You can thread up that long pink tail that you left on your inner ear piece. And you want to align it so that the wider part, or the end of your piece, so the half double crochet end, sits flush with the bottom of your ear. You can pin this into place, or you can hold it, kind of like I like to do. And because the back of this ear isn't really going to show, you can sew all the way through the outer ear piece if you want. But this is also a good way to practice that little pick up a piece of a stitch thing that I like to do. So a little piece of a stitch. Come here. There it is. And I'll just work one more stitch into the edge. And then you want to try and keep your inner ear in the middle-ish of your outer ear, and just pick up stitches, piece of the outer ear, and a piece of the inner ear, all the way up and over. Pause every now and then to make sure it's still in the middle. You want to go all the way around and back down to the other side. Once you've sewn all the way around your inner ear piece, and I've done it so that it doesn't show through to the back, but this isn't as important on this piece, you want to just weave in your tail underneath some of the stitches, kind of like we did with the little short tail out back, This sort of saves you from having to knot it. So come all the way up. Don't pull too tightly. I might go all the way to the top there. There's one more stitch I can get under. And then I'm going to hop over a piece of the stitch and weave it back through the same stitches all the way back to the beginning. And that will pretty much keep my tail from wanting to unravel. There we go. Then I can snip what's left. And you want to do that for both. So you have two little ears. The last piece we're going to make is Bunny's bow tie. I've got a nice turquoise that I'm going to use for mine. You can use whatever color you like, but get a hold of it. We're going to start with a slip knot. And then we're going to chain 15. Once you have 15 chains, we're going to skip the first chain from the hook and we're going to half double crochet into the next chain. So half double crochet into the second chain from the hook and half double crochet into every chain all the way across. So at the end of row 1 of your bow tie, you'll have 14 half double crochet stitches. At the end of row 1, chain 1, turn your work, and half double crochet into every single stitch all the way back across. You'll still have 14 stitches. You want to make 5 rows in total of this. So this is row 2. At the end of this row, chain 1, turn your work, half double crochet back, and continue. I'll see you at the end of row 5. At the end of row 5, you can get yourself a nice long tail because you want to be able to go all the way around sewing, all the way around your bow tie to sew it down to your square. So make sure you cut yourself a nice long length. Fasten off. And now we've got one more little piece of our bow to make. It's the middle part. So continuing with the same color, we're going to make a slip knot. Chain 6, skip the first chain from the hook, find the second, half double crochet into it, and half double crochet into each one all the way back to the beginning. You're going to have 5 half double crochets, and this is a very narrow little strip of fabric. It's a bit fiddly. Once you get to the end, you can fasten off. You don't need very much tail, but you do need a little bit of extra because you are doing a little tiny bit of sewing with it. I find it helpful to get this little short tail out of the road, so you can grab your yarn needle and just weave it in underneath the backs of some of the stitches. Okay, thread up this tail left behind on your little bow middle. Just put that to the side for a second. Grab your main bow and you can set it down, maybe put your fingers on all 4 of the edge corners and sort of pull it into a bit of a bowish shape. Pinch rows 2 and 4 together. So 2 and 4, and then fold 1 down on top and fold 5 up so that you've got a bit of a bow shape going here. You're going to take this middle piece and pull it around so that both the top and the bottom of those pieces meet in the back. Now this is going to be tight, but that's the idea. You're just going to use that little bit of a tie to sew those 2 edges together. try not, so that's the edge of both sides. Try not to get your bow, because you're going to want to be able to move this around a little bit. See, I've got 2 stitches through it now. And I want to just pull it around a little bit on my bow so that my bow looks equal, nice and even on both sides. And now I'm just going to run a couple more stitches through it. Good. I'm going to knot it back here. So I'm on the back of my bow. I'm going to make a quick little knot. And then weave the tail in back and forth underneath some of the stitches across the back of my bow. The last thing you want to do with your bow is find the little short tail that you started with and weave that in on the back side of the bow as well. And then that is all the pieces we need in order to complete our bunny square. We're going to begin by sewing the snout down onto our bunny square. So this is the first piece I like to do because it sort of sets me up for where I'm going to put the rest of the facial features. So in this case, the eyes. In this case, you're going to want to find the seam. So wherever you feel your seam is, that's where we joined all our rows. That's going to face down and I'm going to put the snout on top of it. So I'm going to line up the snout piece so that the bottom of it sits right on the top edge of the last row of our bunny face. So it sits in the bottom middle of the face, basically. Remember, you don't have to worry about that little cast off bit underneath. You can just tuck that underneath. Take your yarn needle, and like we've done with a lot of other projects here on the show, including the calendar blanket squares, we're going to do one of 2 things. You can sort of pin down your piece, or you can hold it in place if you're comfortable doing that. And you're going to not sew through the entire blanket. You're going to pick up a piece of a stitch on the front, and then I'm going to try and do this one-handed so you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Pick up a piece so right underneath the stitch of the actual piece you're sewing down. There we go. Stop every once in a while. Make sure it's still facing the right direction. Grab another piece of a stitch. So this is sort of keeps all of your stitching topical and nothing shows through to the back. So like I've been demonstrating with this other one, all of my pieces are sewn down using the tops of the stitches of the main square, so nothing shows through to the back. It's just a nice neat way to sew everything down. So go ahead and sew down the snout of your bunny in the bottom middle part of the face. Once you're finished sewing on a piece, so you've gotten all the way around, and once again, no stitches are showing through at the back, you can tie a tiny little knot at the side, so over top of one of your last stitches. So you can run your needle underneath the side of a stitch and just knot your yarn. Keep your thumb on it. You keep your thumb on it and your finger, you can tighten it up and keep the knot close to the actual piece that you sewed on. And then you can do this with every single piece you put down. Just run your needle underneath some of the stitches and weave that yarn in. Don't pull too tightly because you don't really want it to show through. Back and forth once is fine. And just very gently pull it out. Maybe put your thumb on that back last loop so that you don't pull it too tight and pull any of your pieces out of alignment. Then you can trim off what's left. And that should secure it. It shouldn't want to come off. And when you put it in the washing machine later, on a gentle cycle, it should be just fine. All right, that's his snout. Let's do his eyes now. I like to put my eyes on either side of his little snout, touching, and make sure that both V's are headed in the same direction. So I'll sew down one and then the other, using the exact same method. So I'll thread up my wool needle here. Make sure I still got that where I want it. You can pin your things down if you want. Pick it up, pick up a piece of a stitch and then a piece of the edge, and then work all the way around. Once you have both eyes sewn down on either side of his snout, we can move on to his ears. So the ears are actually pretty easy to keep. They've got long, long tails on them. I like to cover up those corner spaces. So see our big corner spaces? If you line them up so that the top of your ear curves nicely around that corner of your background, it should line up nice and neatly with the edge of the head of your bunny. So we'll do one at a time. You can pin it down if you feel you need to. Just thread up that long tail. Make sure it's covering nice and neatly. That edge sort of fits into the corner and it butts up against the sort of the edge of the head of your bunny. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up a piece of a stitch. I'm going to work my way across the bottom of the ear first to make sure that it's attached to the edge of the head. There. So that attaches it to the head. And like I say, you can pin it down if you feel you need to, or you can just hold it in place, put in a few stitches, back up, make sure that it's still sitting where you want it to. Piece of a stitch. And work your way up all the way around your ear, back to the corner. You can make a little knot here and then weave your tail back in, back and forth on those gray stitches just a couple times on the back of the ear if you can manage it, and then snip any left over and then work on ear number 2. With our ears on, our bunny is almost finished. Notice I went all the way around using just tops of the pieces of the stitches. Nothing shows through to the back, and those nice big open circles or spaces in our corners are actually covered up by our ears. And they fit in nice and neatly, just rounding the top edge. Let's put on our bow tie now. So, bow tie fits right under his chin, and the curve of the bow is going to follow the curve of his face. So you want to position your bow that it's somewhat in the middle of your square. I'll bring this up nice and close. So here's his nose, here's his chin. I'm going to put the very center of my bow right on the bottom of his chin, and I'm going to begin sewing. I'm going to sew across the edge of every stitch along his face, and his bow tie is going to pretty much follow the contour of his face. So the last 2 stitches I'll probably just go off a little bit into the rest of the square, but you see most of it follows the contour of his face. And you're going to begin at the top edge, and you can do one of 2 things. You can pin it down, or you can start sewing, and you can sew either the long way around or start going under his face. I'm going to start by going along his face. I'm going to work my first stitch into a piece of the background. I'm always going to stop and look at it and make sure it's in the right spot. Pick it up. Maybe the next piece will also be a bit of the background. Put it down. Yep, still good. And now I'm going to start following the face. So I know that I can follow the face edge stitches, so a little piece of each stitch along the face, until I get to the center, which will be right at the bottom of his chin, and I can do the same thing going out the other way. Okay, so I've used a piece of the edge of all of his face stitches, put it right down to the bottom of his chin. I used just one little piece along the side of the middle of my bow. I've got this nice three-dimensional thing going on here, so just a little piece at the side. And then I continued using edge stitches of his face for all of the edges of my bow. The last couple were parts of the background stitch, and then I'm just going to do the whole sort of simpler thing all the way around, just using a piece of the stitch. Put it down every once in a while, make sure it's still where you want it. So all the way down, and you can bunch it up a little bit so that your corners touch the edge of your background color. Up to the middle, a little piece of the side of your bow, so something like right here on the side, and then just continue all the way around. Alright, I've sewn down my entire bow tie all the way around. I had quite a lot of yarn left over, so I took the opportunity to thread it all the way across my bow under these stitches, and then back again, so I know it's not coming out. Now I can snip my yarn, and that is that. One bunny square, just in time for April. And there you have it, the April calendar blanket square, a bunny rabbit. As always, this pattern and all of the other patterns for the calendar blanket squares we've done so far on the show are available for sale at our Etsy shop. And thank you so much to everyone who has popped in recently and done some shopping. We really appreciate the support. That's it for this week, everybody. I hope to see you again soon on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, and have an awesome week. Bye!